All right, here we go. Let's get started. Genesis chapter 4, verse 8. We're going to try to make it to 16, but there is a lot. And by the way, you just need to get comfortable, all right? Because I'm going to try to be fast, but it ain't going to be fast tonight. There's a lot to cover. So if you got to study or something, you should have planned ahead. Don't leave while I'm talking. All right, let's start with some background. Last week, we talked about a lot of stuff, and so I don't have time to go over every single thing. That's why we have a podcast, so you can go and check it out on your own. We don't make money off of that, but that's something that you can go and just listen to and get caught up. Sometimes you have to re-listen to stuff. I talk really fast sometimes. That's a criticism I get. I think it's a compliment. It's a debate, but I talk really fast, so sometimes it's nice to just go back and re-listen and make sure you get the full weight of what's happening. But just to quickly recap, in our store, we had Adam and Eve that came. We didn't read this, but we did this a while back. Adam and Eve came. They were put on the earth. They were made by God. It was a beautiful picture. And then Adam and Eve, what? They sinned. They were sent out of the garden. Then out of the garden, they started this new life. And in this new life, they had their first child, Cain. And Cain came. He was the first birth, as best we can tell, the first birth that's ever been on the earth. And then Abel came right after him. Some argue that maybe they were twins. There's not much proof there, but that's just an interesting thought. Could be kind of cool. But right after that, Abel came. So you have Cain, the first child, Abel, the second. Cain served as a worker of the ground. Abel served as a shepherd, all right, as a herder of sheep. And so those are their roles. Cain's name, this is kind of interesting. Cain's name comes basically from the root word. It comes from made. Is his word? His name means made, and it's kind of an interesting thought because remember Eve said that this is my child whom God and I made together, and so it's kind of cool. She named him made, but then Abel's name is actually breath, like in a breath, like in a breath's moment, because Abel's life was so short. Just told you what was going to happen in the story, pretending you didn't hear that. But Abel's life was so short that it was like a breath. You know, when you take a breath, it's so quick. It just happens. Abel lived to be in his teens while others were living to be hundreds of years old. So when you compare these two things, he was like just a breath of air. So fast he was here and so short was he on the earth, okay? And then Cain and Abel were given instruction by God to do what? To bring an offering before the Lord. And they brought this offering before the Lord. And Cain's offering was refused, but Abel's offering was received. And now this is interesting because this is how they showed honor to God. And we believe that God gave them command that they would bring forth the first of their fruits or the first of their animals. So for Abel, it was a sheep, the best, the first and the best. And for Cain, it was crops coming from the ground because remember, he was a worker of the ground. And so they bring these before the Lord, but the Lord denies Cain and receives Abel. Now for us, we make this more modern day translation. Times have changed. Right? We're not herders of sheep. Maybe there's some in here. We're not necessarily growers of the ground. We don't necessarily work with crops the same way that we did. So for us, now it's currency. Now it's money. Money is our same representation to them. Back then, they had no money. They did it through animals. They did it through crops. So when they bring their first portions, for us, we can translate that with our finances, that we bring our first portions before the Lord. But there was a problem. And the problem is they both brought their portions. They both served noble jobs. Both their jobs had value. Yet when Abel brought his, the Lord received it. When Cain brought his, the Lord did not. And the difference is this. Abel's heart was right with God, and Cain's was not. Cain, in our terminology, was not a believer. And so Cain did bring his offering, but it wasn't received because he wasn't in right standing with God. Guys, this is a perfect illustration of faith versus works. Faith versus works. If you get into theology, if you get into studying the Bible, you're going to come across this battle. And it's not a battle. It's really simple. All of us can bring an offering before the Lord. We can do works. We can bring something before the Lord. But if our heart is not made right with God, if we have not chosen to place our faith in Jesus Christ, our works are dead. Why? Because without faith, God does not receive them. And so Cain's heart was not right with God, so he brought the works, but he didn't have the faith. Abel had the faith in God, and so when he brought his offering, it was received by God. Faith and works. And so this is a little great illustration of how that plays out now. And so here we move through the story. Cain gets really upset. He's frustrated that he's angry that the Lord did not receive his offering. He can't believe it. He doesn't like it. It doesn't make sense. He's not okay with it. And then he begins to have a conversation with God. And God does this, by the way. He has conversations with you and I, maybe not vocally, but he gets us. He probes our conscience. He probes our thinking. He probes our hearts. The Holy Spirit moves in us and we begin to think. And the Lord begins to do work. And he's doing work in Cain's mind and in Cain's heart. And he's probing him. And he's trying to get him to realize what he did. God doesn't come with the hammer yet. He says, I want you to think about what you did. What's wrong? Why are you mad? Why is your face turned to the ground? Why are you mad at me? And Cain's response comes now in verse 8. The conversation with God is over. And Cain goes to Abel. And Cain speaks to Abel, his brother. And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and he killed him. What happened? Maybe you're thinking that. That's what I'm thinking. You were just having a conversation with God. He was probing you. He was trying to get out of you. Hey, what did you do? Why did you do that? Think about that. Think about what's wrong. And he gets so angry that he lures his brother Abel out into a field and he kills him. We go from a conversation with God to murder. And here's what happened. Cain decided, I don't want righteousness. I don't want to be right with God. I don't want to bring offering. I don't want any of that. I want sin. I want my own desire. I want what I want. Ever been there before? Pretty much all of us at some point in our life. And Cain decides that I want nothing to do with God and I want my own desire. And then he begins to look at Abel. Remember, there's nobody else. It's Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel right now in the garden, all right, in the place where they're at. So there's no one else to hang out with. He's looking at Abel, and I'm filling in the white spaces here, but he's looking at Abel, and we just assume that he gets so fed up with this perfect little child Abel, sibling rivalry, ever been there? This perfect little child can't do anything wrong. God accepts his offering, but he won't accept mine. And he gets so angry that he resorts to what? He kills his brother. Now, please, you're old enough now in sibling rivalry. Do not kill your sibling. Just walk away. Cain didn't know that, though. Cain didn't understand that. How many of you have a brother or sister? Make sure I'm talking the right. Okay, all of you. All right, if you killed him, don't answer that question. Bad. And Cain is so mad. And you know what it is? It's what we talked about last week. People resent truth. They don't want to hear it. And it becomes violent. And we talk about all these categories in the world right now that are happening. And people get angry. How dare you tell me about God? How dare you tell me that it's wrong to be a homosexual? How dare you tell me I can't abort my baby? It's my choice. I choose. I decide. It's what I want to do. And they get mad, they get angry, they resent God and they resent people. And guess what? Cain in the field looks at Abel and he has very similar experience and he decides to raise up against his brother and he kills him. And this is what's crazy. This was the first murder of a person that's ever happened in the history of mankind in the world ever. I wonder, this is me speaking, I wonder if he even realized that someone could die. Think about that. He'd never seen it before. Maybe he thought, and we don't know what. A lot of people say that he hit him, so we'll just kind of go with. Maybe he hit him once, maybe hit him twice. Never thought he would actually die. He just was so angry. Ever been there? You're just punching the wall until your hand bleeds, right? Guys, girls don't understand that. And he's hitting him, and he probably just thinks, well, as soon as I'm done, I feel better, I'll stop, right? We've seen that before in movies. We see that. We hear about that with people and with violence. I just keep hitting until I feel better. He never, most likely, didn't think he was going to die, and then he hits him, and then finally, he drops dead. And we have the first murder in history. Brother against brother. Crazy. And what happens? Remember what God said? That sin is going to be waiting at the door. It's going to be crouching at the door, and its desire will be to overtake you. And you, if you don't choose me, are going to spend the rest of your life trying to fight against it. And the sin of anger, of resentment, overtook Cain, and he killed his brother. And I think about, and I love stories. I love to just kind of get you probing. So again, this is in the white spaces, meaning it's not written. It's just me helping us see a big picture. I imagine what it was like for Adam and Eve. Remember, they started this when they sinned in the garden and they were forced to leave, and now they're raising kids and they're watching their kids. And remember, God said that from your seed, from the seed of Adam, a child is going to rise and he's going to crush the head of the serpent. Remember, Eve thought maybe that was Cain. Maybe Cain was that answer. And then all of a sudden, what does she hear? Cain is the one that kills Abel. Can you imagine? I mean, I can't imagine a parent losing a child, but the first time ever, the first murder, the first child in history, gone. Imagine what it was like for Adam and Eve. And imagine what they thought, thinking, this is the progression of sin that we started in the garden because we just wanted a little bit more knowledge about who God was. And isn't that how it works? We just want a little bit more. I want to know a little bit more. I'm going to sin a little bit more. I want to desire money a little bit more. I'm going to desire a relationship a little bit more. We're going to go a little bit further, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then where do we end up? We end up in a dark place that we didn't intend to be because all we wanted was a little more. And Adam and Eve, all they wanted was just to be a little bit more like God. And now we are watching that sin destructively unfold on the life of their kids. The progression of sin. And then verse 9. And then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? And Cain says, he said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? A little sarcastic, huh? You try that with mom. Just kidding. My mom, maybe. Not really. I'm kidding, mom. Sorry. She's probably watching. The Lord didn't need information, did he? He didn't need to know what happened. The Lord knows everything. If you didn't know that, now you do. The Lord knows everything. He sees everything. He knew exactly what happened the moment that it took place. But what was he doing? Again, he came to Cain and was probing his mind, trying to show him, trying to get him to say what he had done, trying to get him to realize the magnitude of what he had done. Has anyone ever done that to you? When you're going through a tough time and you need an answer, and instead of them just telling you what to do, they start probing you with questions and they're getting you thinking, trying to come up with your own solution. It's an incredible strategy, but it's frustrating when you're the person they're doing it to. Just like, I know what you're doing. Just tell me the answer right now so I can be fixed and go. God is doing the same thing to Cain. He already knows what happened. He knows what's going to happen, but he's probing Cain, trying to see if maybe he will come to his senses. And we know that Cain left the scene because he asked, where's Abel? If he hadn't left the scene, the body would be right there, so he would know. So we know Cain committed his crime, and then he left. And then look at him try to cover it up. What does he say? I don't know. Bold-faced lie, right? You know exactly what you did, Cain. You killed your brother right there in that field, and then you left. I don't know. And then he comes back with that sarcastic remark, and he says, am I my brother's keeper? He tries to cover it up by saying, I don't know. And then he tries to shift focus. Doesn't he? Am I my brother's keeper? Like, let's stop talking about the murder. Am I my brother's keeper? I mean, you didn't tell me that was part of the deal. Is that part of the deal? If I didn't know that, then maybe we should start all this over. He's trying to shift focus, right? He's trying to get away from the scenario, make a change, just pull away, and he can't. And we see the progression of sin. And remember Adam and Eve in the garden, what happened? Did they boldly lie to God? No, they were very timid. Adam did what most men do. It's her fault. She did it. This woman you gave me did that, so it's actually your fault. It's not me, I'm innocent. Guys, we still haven't learned. But they were very timid. They were trying to point fingers and say the serpent may. But no, what does Cain do? He essentially looks God in the eye and says, I didn't do it. What am I, my brother's keeper? Look at the progression of sin. The timidity is gone. In the face of God, he will lie. And isn't this how sin works in the world? Is the world getting any better? Is it getting any more excited? No, it's getting worse. Sin is progressing. I mean, Sarah and I were watching TV the other day. We love to watch TV. And it's like every show on TV has a homosexuality scene. Every show. Maybe because the shows we're watching, babe. I just thought about that. It's another story. But I'm serious. Even on the ABC Family Channel, which is a total lie. What is wrong with them? The things they show. This is what happens. Sin progresses. It progresses so much that it becomes comfortable, so much that it becomes okay. It becomes normal. It becomes natural. This is just the way the world is, guys. Wrong. This is the progression of sin. This is the enemy taking sin and magnifying it, blowing it up so that it will wreak destruction on every person on the planet, including you and I. We are watching the progression of sin. And by the way, everything that's happening in the world goes all the way back to these moments that we're studying right now, to Adam and Eve causing that first sin, to Cain taking that sin and progressing it further and bringing in murder and then trying to cover it up. And here we are in the world we live today. I've got to move faster. We're running out of time. Verse 10, and the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying for me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand." This is amazing. God becomes the investigator, the interrogator, the prosecutor, and the judge all in one moment. And this is great because there's no government. There's no people here to set a rule and to bring forth capital punishment. God steps in as interrogator, investigator, prosecutor, and judge. And he decides what? He brings the punishment. And listen, let me tell you, if you don't trust God to punish people that have wronged you, you have totally misunderstood and underestimated who God is. God handles our punishment, not us. All right, now we're not talking about parents to kids. We're talking about people that persecute you, people that harm you, people that take advantage of you at work, at school, and your families. God handles those punishments, and I'll tell you why. One, because his punishments are greater than you could ever do. And most of the time, if you want to give a great punishment, it comes with a great consequence for you. But more importantly than that, there will be times that God will decide not to punish someone. And we would never do that, because we want everyone to suffer for doing us wrong. But sometimes God steps in and he protects his children. Why? So they could fly free? No. So they would have a chance to see his grace and his mercy and come into a relationship with him. And almost every one of us could say, there was a time that I deserved some kind of punishment. I wronged somebody and they should have punched me in the face, or ladies, they should have said something really mean about me, and whatever. That should have happened. But it didn't. And you know why? Because God was working. And you look back now and you go, thank the Lord that didn't happen, because I was spared. I was able to see who he was. And now I can walk with him in a whole new way. You see how that works? And so we've got to be reminded that God is the judge. He is the jury. He is the investigator, the prosecutor. He will handle all of it. Trust him, because he knows what he's doing. And here, Cain didn't have a choice. But look what happens. Cain is spared. Cain is spared. He murders his brother. Good old honest Abel. He murders his brother, and God, according to our law, should have murdered him as punishment. Eye for an eye, rock for a rock, however you want to interpret it. He should have died. But what did God do? God gave him grace, and he gave him mercy. And he said, I am not going to kill you. Now, this is amazing. And you think about the people then. I mean, Adam and Eve, I imagine as a parent to a child, it would be hard to say your son, your other son deserves the death penalty. But for anyone else in the family down the road, they would have wanted one thing, that man be killed for the harm that he did to their family. But God had a bigger picture and a bigger plan. And by the way, we're still talking about it thousands of years later here tonight, learning from this situation. Then verse 12, when you work, so here's his punishment. He's done all the investigating, all the prosecuting. Now comes the punishment. When you work the ground, remember that was his job. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive, a wanderer on the earth. This is crazy. Okay, was that powerful to you? Okay, because let me watch this. This is so cool. Okay, first, he says you're going to try to work. You're going to try to work the ground like you've been doing. And you're going to work, and you're going to try as hard as you want. Work as hard as you can. But when it's done, you'll have nothing to show for it. This is part of his punishment. You will sweat, you will bleed, nothing will come of it. In essence, he takes his job away. Now you go, praise the Lord, I hate my job. Do that. Cain didn't hate his job. Neither did Abel, neither did Adam, neither did Eve. Now, it was more painful because of the sin that Adam and Eve caused in the garden. But do you remember in the beginning, to work was worship. To work was worship to God. It was their connection to Him through what? Through nature. They were connecting to God. And so even though it was harder now because of the curse, they were still connected to God. Their job was of great joy to them. Remember this, it was the only thing they had. They didn't have Facebook. They didn't have a degree. They didn't have all the stuff we have. The only thing they had was their job. And what did God do as part of His punishment? He took Cain's job away. How many of you have a job that you absolutely love? Raise your hand. Okay, that's about right, half of you. Imagine someone coming and imagine God just saying, because of what you've done, I am taking that job away from you. That would be hard, wouldn't it? All right, I know the rest of you, just what you want. It would be extremely hard, but then look what happens. He goes one step further. He says, you shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever been lost before? She's crying already. It's awesome. It's not fun, is it? Guys, stop. Don't answer that. It's not fun. It's scary, right? When you get lost. I remember there was one time we were camping. That was the first problem. I don't do good outside. We were camping, and some sweet little girl decided to wander off like Cain, fugitive of the land. And she decided to wander off, and she got lost. And an hour later, it's nighttime, and we're looking around, and I'm going, this is why I don't camp, this is why I don't camp, this is why I don't camp, I don't want to do this. But I was in charge, so they go, we've got to go find her. So the guys are like, oh yeah, you know what? So we muscle up, we man up, and we go out there, and we start looking, and we can't find her. She was lost. You know what happened? She cried. She cried. A lot. A lot. You know what happened to us, though? Well, we didn't cry, but we got sad, too, because we really thought we lost someone. We really thought, now we ended up finding her, and she wandered away and came back, and all was fine. But, man, when you get lost, it's scary. It's scary, and then you become angry, and you become frustrated, and I just want to be home. I just want to be home. Why isn't this map getting me where I need to go? And we get frustrated. Listen, imagine an entire life losing the job that you love, the job that brings you closest to the Lord. Now, for Cain, remember, his heart wasn't in the right spot, so he wasn't really pursuing that. But imagine losing that great job and then spending the rest of your life wandering in literally the wilderness, just trying to find a place to sleep, just trying to find a way to eat. That was Cain's punishment. And if we've lost a good job or ever been lost, we can begin to taste what Cain was feeling. And then look what he says. He says to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. My punishment is greater than I can bear. Now, before we get sympathetic for Cain, and he deserves a little sympathy, this is hard, Cain should have said, Lord, I have royally screwed up. Lord, I have done wrong. I have sinned against you. I have sinned against my brother. I have sinned against my family. He should have fell to his knees and begged God for mercy. But what did he say? My punishment is too great. Now, guys, listen. We do the same thing. When we should be on our knees begging God for mercy, we get mad because we got in trouble. Because something happened to us. I got a ticket. I got arrested. I lost my girlfriend or my boyfriend or this. And you go, I can't believe you would do it. No. You did it. This is the punishment for what you have done. And what we should do is fall to our knees and say, God, I'm sorry. And I know you are sovereign, and I know you love me, and I know you will only allow what happens to me to be what's necessary. And so I know you're punishing me, but you're punishing me to bring me back in line so that I can move in the right direction. But we get angry at God, and we blame God, and we point fingers at God when we need to be on our knees asking for mercy. And Cain does the same thing. He killed his brother, the first murder of history. He should have been begging for mercy. And what does he say? My punishment is too great. And I want to tell you something. You think about that wandering the land. Think of it like this. A fugitive is forced to run from home. A stranger is wandering around just simply lost. But a pilgrim is walking or running toward home. He was a fugitive, lost and forced to run from his home. By the way, as Christians, we're pilgrims, if you didn't know that. We're pilgrims. You know why? Because we are running through this life toward what? Toward home, toward heaven. That's our home. That's our final destination. Don't miss that. We're not staying in this world. We're moving through this world to get to the next. We are pilgrims. Cain was no longer a pilgrim. He was now a fugitive, and he would be a fugitive for the rest of his life. And he says, my punishment is more than I can bear. And he didn't accept it. And by the way, talk about the gospel. When you talk about hell to people, what do they say? I can't believe a God that would create hell. How dare he? Who does he think he is? If he loves everyone, if God is love, if God so loved the world, why would he create hell? His response would be, I'll interpret for you. I gave you paradise in the beginning, and you sinned, and you broke that apart. So I let you go. But then I came back, and I came down as a man in the form of Jesus, lived a perfect life to show you how, and then died a brutal, bloody death for the totality of sin so that you didn't have to experience sin and you didn't have to experience hell. All you had to do was receive me, yet you chose not to. You tell me who's the bad guy. But my punishment is too great. That's all we can think about. That's all we can settle on. Why would God do this? Why would God do this? Why would he allow this to happen? And God says, I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I just want to bring you back. I want to bring you home. Your parents punished you when you were a kid. You think they liked that? They didn't. But they were punishing you because they knew they needed to bring you back in line so that your life wouldn't go down the drain, so that your life could have a purpose and a future. And God does the same thing. And God was trying to do that with Cain, but Cain chose not to listen. And then verse 14, listen what Cain says. Behold, you've driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. What he does is he recites it. He thinks maybe, and I'm assuming here, he thinks if I just say this again, maybe God will hear how really tough this punishment is, and maybe he'll change his mind. Did you ever do that with your parents? So you're going to ground me, take my phone, cause me to live on the street, because I got to live in my room for the rest of my life. And we try to recite. Cain does the same thing. You know what God says? Stop. But it's interesting. He adds something. He says, whoever finds me will kill me. Whoever finds me will kill me. Why do you think that is? Well, one, you got to remember at this point, most likely there were more kids. Cain and Abel were first, but Adam and Eve had more kids. So the population has begun. And Cain knows that. And if a population has begun from Adam and Eve, that makes them all what? Family. I don't know about you, but if you kill one of my brothers or sisters, I'm not going to kill you because I'm a Christian, I love Jesus, and I'll let him do it for me. But the reality is, that was mean, I'm sorry. But the reality is, I'm going to have a hard time getting over that. Am I not? I'm going to have a hard time. And Cain knew that. And he knew this family, my family, is going to know what I did to my brother. And they're going to want to take me out. Verse 15, we're almost there. 2 more. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who found him should attack him. Even though Cain did deserve to die. I mean, really, in light of the story and murdering, he deserved to die, but God gave him mercy. And then God extended that mercy and said, you know what? You're probably right. He knew that. You're probably right. They're all going to be really upset with you. So I'm going to put a mark on you. Now, we don't know what that mark is. It could have been a tattoo. It's not a good argument for a tattoo, so don't try that. Whatever it was, he put a mark on him. And somehow the people in the land would know that that mark was to keep Cain safe. Can I tell you what? Cain most likely regretted getting that down the road. when he finally realized that meant he would spend the rest of his life wandering the world, never, ever really finding what he was looking for. He probably would have rather died. But he didn't know. He didn't understand. He was so caught up in his punishment. He didn't want mercy or forgiveness. He wanted mercy from punishment. And so God granted it. And Cain probably thought, I got something. I got a little bit knocked off my sentence, so I'm feeling better. And then verse 16, then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Can I tell you something, guys? That phrase is really sad. That Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled east of Eden. Adam and Eve were removed from Eden. Cain was forced to go even further from Eden and to be removed from the presence of God. There is no greater place we can be than the presence of God. And Cain would now live his life without the job he loved, wandering the world lost and away from the presence of God. And it's interesting, Cain doesn't say anything, at least it's not recorded. He doesn't finally give in. He doesn't apologize. He most likely takes his punishment and says, okay, I'm going to be all right, and walks away. Friends, let me tell you something. You will never, I will never, we will never be all right away from God, ever. And some of you know that. You know that very, very hard truth. And it is driving you to continue living this life and pursuing the Lord the best you can because you know what it's like. Others of you, maybe you don't even realize what it's like in the presence of God. And I want to tell you, you can have that tonight. You can have that. Because God makes himself available to everyone. Even if you're a Cain, he makes himself available, but all we have to do is receive. And so Cain settled away from Eden, perfect paradise, even further than his parents were removed. And that was it. I want to leave you with just a couple of thoughts, just to kind of recap what we've said. First one is this, there's 5. Little sins, if not dealt with quickly, will grow deadly and destructive. Little sins, little sins, little sins. What was Cain's little sin? Anger. He got angry, he got resentful. If he had dealt with that, he wouldn't have killed Abel, and who knows where this story would have landed. But he didn't deal with it. He acted upon it. Some of you have a little sin right now, a little struggle. Maybe it's drugs, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's the way you think, maybe it's the way you talk, maybe it's the way you treat women, maybe it's the way you treat guys, maybe it's the relationships you get in. They're just little sins, but guess what? Those little sins will grow and they'll become deadly and they'll become destructive. And that's not an if, maybe, could be. It's an always will be until we hand it over to the Lord and he takes those away. Don't get caught in the little sins thinking it's just something little. It's just one look at the picture. It's just one look. It's one little look that's going to lead you to a lifetime of destruction. That's a guarantee, because that is the devil's only mission. Number 2, our parents' sins affect us, but they don't have to define us. Some of you have horrible parenting background. And that doesn't make them bad people. We're not saying that, but how they raised you, what they did to you, things they said to you were unacceptable. And I want to tell you, the normal route is that you would turn around and do the very same thing to your kids. That's just naturally what happens. And I'm going to tell you this, what your parents did to you will always affect you. It doesn't have to ruin your life, but it will affect you. Because they're your parents. They were designed by God to take care of you, to be together as one, not single parents. They were designed to be together. They were designed to love you, to train you, to teach you, to mold you. That was all supposed to be how it was. But for some of you, it didn't. And I want to tell you, you can let that just affect you and move on, or you can let that take your life down a spiral that you'll never get out of, and you'll end up doing the same thing to your kids. It doesn't have to be that way. Their sins are going to affect you, but they do not have to define you. Adam and Eve sinned, and it affected their kids. It defined Cain because he followed in Daddy's footsteps, and he took it to another level. Be different. And some of you have great parents, and praise the Lord, that's awesome, and this isn't for you. But you be different. It doesn't have to define you. Number 3, God's punishment is far greater than ours, so stay out of the way. Stay out of the way. Some people, God's going to give mercy, and they're not going to like it, but you just shut it and let him do his thing. Others, God is going to bring the rain. Let him bring it, but you can't help. You will not make it worse. You'll just harm yourself. And others, God may use that moment to try to teach a lesson, but if you're in the way, just bringing more and more punishment, trying to cause more drama, trying to take little stabs at them, say these things, all you're doing is getting in the way of what God is trying to show them, quite possibly getting in the way of him trying to show them the mercy and what he did for them on the cross. But you are so hung up on your vengeance that you get in the way. Don't do that. Don't do that. Number 4, without Christ, we are strangers in the land, but with him, we are pilgrims heading home. Guys, our hope in this destructive, evil, deadly world is not in this world. It is in our destination. That destination is heaven. That's where our hope is. That's what we're striving for. That's what we're running to. A beautiful picture. And then number 5, the last one. God's mercy covers even a murderer. Why would it be any different for you? Some of us here have something in our life that we think God can't forgive us for. God can, will, and wants to forgive you for anything and everything. He gave grace and mercy to Cain, though Cain didn't want full salvation. That was his choice. But God had those conversations. God gave him a chance. And he chose not to respond. Friends, listen, there is nothing you can do that will separate you from God. Not anything. And by the way, let me just add this. When you say, I have a sin that God can't forgive, that what Jesus did on the cross can't forgive, what you're saying is, hey, Jesus, you died that brutal, bloody death on the cross, and I know you did that, and you did that for me, but that death, that brutal death that you went through wasn't enough to cover this sin. I don't think there's anyone on the planet that would actually say that to him. But we can get caught up and let ourselves start to think that way, that maybe my sin's too big. God can forgive them, he can forgive that, but he can't forgive me. Listen, that's not the case. That's not the case. Jesus died on the cross to forgive every single sin for all who would choose to receive him and allow him to do it. We see the progression of sin. And I'm just going to tell you, this world is not going to get any better. And I wish I was different. I wish I could tell you something different, but I can't. This world is not going to get any better. And I'm going to tell you even further, if you're a Christian and you aren't feeling some sort of weight, some sort of persecution, some sort of something coming against you, there's a really good chance that the enemy is not afraid of you, that you aren't doing anything to wreak destruction on him, and so he leaves you alone because you are handling yourself. I was talking to one of the guys at our Cypress campus. He's the teaching pastor over there, and they're doing the series on evil like we are on Sunday. And you know what he said? It was crazy. He said, I can't wait to get out of it because my staff has been under attack since the day we started talking and fighting against evil. And I smiled and said, that's how it's supposed to be. As Christians, we stand for God and we fight against sin, we fight against the devil, and guess what? He's going to fight back. That's life. Life's going to get hard. Things are going to get crazy. Your schedule's going to get busy. Your job may be difficult. Your school may pile up. Guess what? That's life. Guess what? That's the enemy. Guess what? Someone may come to you and say, I can't believe you're a Christian. You're an idiot. I can't believe you hate me because I'm homosexual. That's life. That's the enemy coming after you. God says you stand firm. You come into relationship with me and I take care of the rest. That's your job. And you know what the world needs? I'll tell you. The world needs love. They need love. Let me tell you something. God is love. How does the world get God's love? When you become a Christian. Because guess what? In case you didn't know, in the beginning, in the Garden of Eden, in perfect paradise, Adam and Eve sinned. Sin broke perfect paradise. Adam and Eve were removed and separated from God, and the curse has been set on mankind ever since. But God got tired of looking down on his people, wandering around, trying to figure out how to do this, going through this sacrificial system and trying to make all things right. So we sent Jesus to come down, to live on the earth, to live a perfect life, to die on the cross, a brutal death, then to raise again and ascend into heaven. And before he ascended into heaven, he left with us salvation. He equipped us with gifting, and he empowered us with the Holy Spirit, and he said, you go. And guess what? What do? We go love. If God is love, and God is in you and I as Christians, we are the extension of God's love to the world. But here's what we do. We sit online, and we watch all the comments, and we watch all the stories, and we write our opinion, and we say, send, oh, take that. And we think we're making a difference in the world, and we're not. Or others of us sit in our own problems and our own things, and how the world's falling apart, and my boyfriend broke up with me, and my job is stressful, and school is overwhelming. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for the Bible. I've just got to study. And you wonder why your world is not where it needs to be. Because you're not answering the call that's been placed on you. And I'm not saying work is important, school isn't important. All those are important. All those are ways God uses you to continue to, guess what? Show love. This is what the world needs. The world needs you and I living out what God has called us to do. He didn't just save you. He equipped you to do something in this world. And I have always thought that this ministry was going to do something incredible. And I always thought it was going to be real big. People were going to come, maybe come to Christ, get baptized. Life's going to be changed. And everyone would look at me and go, oh, great Chad, great job. You know what I realized? The last part was really a problem. The first part we're all okay. But here's what I realized. That's not what God called this place to be. He called this place to be a place that brings in people. Some that are Christians, some that are not, some that are considered rejects from the world, some that have potential to be the president, to bring them all in and to help them find a place to meet God, to connect with God, to be empowered, and then to go out into the world and do something. I thought it was going to happen here. They were all going to come here, and that's what God was going to do. Is say, I realize now that's not the case. It's about sending you out there to do something for Him. The world needs love. You are the extension of love. The problems aren't going anywhere. The solution is Him coming back. In the meantime, we are the medication to get through. And for some in this world, we will be the answer for them to find eternal life, leading them to Jesus Christ, who is the only one that can bring them home. That's your job. That's my job. If you want to be something, you want to do something with your life, this is the place to be. Not because of us, but because He's going to show you how to do it. But listen, do not call yourself someone that comes to Underground if you walk out those doors and act the same way before you came in. Do not call yourself someone that comes to Underground if you're not interested in living for the kingdom and making an impact in the world. That's what this place is about. And maybe next week, none of y'all will come back. That's all right. Whoever's left, we will walk out those doors and we'll make a difference for God, because that is why we are here, period.